Hello.
Hi.
Welcome. I'm Michelle Cullen.
I'm Judy David.
And we are here today to talk to you about all things backstage at theater. And Chapel Street Players is, once again, like so many other Delaware nonprofits, thrilled to be participating in Do More 24 from Delaware. And hopefully this year we can beat our goal. We started with a goal last night of $7,500, and we surpassed that.
In the first variety show hour, yeah.
Yes. So we raised our goal, and so now our goal is $12,500. It's just amazing.
So much
and
money.
we're really close to that. So we hope that you consider donating and helping us get to that next level of our goal.
Right. And this hour is another Green Philanthropist hour. So it works just like the variety show did last night. So however many individual unique donations we get, that gives us a better chance of winning prizes and stuff. Woo, yay, I love that.
And you can see on your screen the URL to go to give. So chapelstreetplayers.org/give. And that's where you can donate to Chapel Street for Delaware Do More 24.
Right. Oh, and there's a special way you can donate. Did you want to talk about that? The chairs?
We are about to launch a capital campaign. As you may have heard, we're going to be moving, and the video will tell us that. But we have a special announcement about how you can donate and get something special for your donation. So if the tech booth would please play the video.
As part of the Do More 24 campaign, we are offering a special incentive for our Chapel Street patrons, volunteers, and friends. As many of you have heard, CSP is working with Lang Development to build a brand new theater, and even better news, it has plenty of parking. We have started a soft launch of our capital campaign to assist with the move and new facility. The capital campaign kicks off with Take a Seat. We'll be investing in new auditorium seating, and you have the opportunity to buy a chair and become a permanent fixture without even being there. And if for some reason we remain in our current space, your donations will help us to replace our current seats. During the capital campaign, you will be able to purchase a seat for $1,000. Your donation allows you to select any section of the theater in which to place your seat. But as part of the Do More 24 campaign, we are cutting the Take a Seat price in half, and you can grab your seat for only $500. This offer is only available during the Do More 24 campaign. Also, your $500 donation does not have to be a single donation. It can be cumulative across the 24-hour period. A plaque on your seat can include your name, your family's name, a name of a loved one, or even your company. Your plaque will remind future generations that your personal commitment makes their theater experience possible. We thank you in advance for your generosity, and we would also like to thank Do More 24 Delaware and the many sponsors who are giving additional incentives and bonuses during this event. We would also like to thank the Delaware Division of the Arts for their continued support of artists across the state of Delaware and to Chapel Street Theater.
Okay. Thanks for watching that. Hopefully you'll buy a seat if you haven't. Maybe buy two. Maybe two next to each other. Who knows? Anyway, when we did a show a few years back called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a friend of mine at work, son, was cast in it. And so he asked if he could help because he'd always wanted to help his son or get to know what his son was doing on these plays that his son loved so much. So he played one of the catatonics. And one of the things he said to me that really stuck is he had no idea how many people put in so much work for just that 2.5 hours worth of entertainment for everybody. So we thought we'd talk about what the different roles are. And I'm going to start with the person who's in charge of it all, the director. Michelle is our director of Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, our next show. So Michelle, why don't you talk about what it takes to be a director, things you have to do and be?
Well, there's a lot. The first time I directed, I don't think I realized just how much work goes into being a director because you are all things. You start by, of course, reading the play like 100 times to find all the little subtleties and nuances of the characters and what the writer really had intended for that message to be sent across to the audience. And then you have to come up with your plan on how you are going to convey that message. And you can do it in a lot of different ways, but it's your vision, I guess, on how you want that message to be conveyed. So you start by planning blocking, and blocking by blocking, what we mean is where the actors move. So that's the term we give for assigning a character to move across the stage and pick up the phone or anything along those lines. And then you have to decide what costumes you want and or what that vision is. So you do all of that planning usually before you even get cast, so there's all of that work. And then of course there's the rehearsals. So where you have multiple nights a week of rehearsing and you try to work on so many different things, right?
Yeah,
we talk about,
just everything, volume, diction, but also mostly are you conveying the vision that the director has? That's everybody else's job in the show, is to help Michelle's vision come to life. That's what everybody else is here for. We do have an assistant director, Gary, and we're hoping he can pop in sometime today, but he's at work. So being a director is also different than in like professional theater where you just direct the actors and say, I want this. No, at Chapel Street, you're pretty much also the production manager. You're in charge of everything, and you just spend the entire time making decisions over and over and over again.
That is true. So if you're not good at making decisions, maybe being a director is not for you.
Right. But if you are interested, we always can use assistant directors to help learn, because it's not even just like, oh, where should the actors go and what does this line mean? It's how do you turn off the air conditioning or the heat? Those sort of things are all sort of balled up into one. So it is not a starter position, but it's a heck of a satisfying one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
One thing is interesting. You mentioned professional theater versus community theater. We have some restrictions in a community theater that you might not have. We do have a tight budget, right? So we don't have lots and lots of money to put on a play that you might see in Broadway. So a lot of the decisions that you have to make are how can we convey what we wanted to convey with less money? So we have to be frugal. But I've always looked at that as it's more of an opportunity to be creative,
right?
Because you have to find ways to do things cheaply, and maybe you give the impression of something that's not really there.
And that's Chapel Street stage is also very small, so that also, creates a lot of challenges, but a lot of chances to be inspirational. So,
and we will hear a lot about that later when we talk about, we have a bunch of other visitors today, but we talk about all the other pieces that go into this. This is where we have to get even more creative when you're designing a set or set decorating or doing props, because again, we don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of space. So how can you be creative in finding those costumes that are in the period that you want? So the challenge we have with our current play, come back to the Five and Dime Jimmy Dean, is that we do have to play two different time frames, the 50s and the 70s. And there's a lot of people on stage, and we have a very tiny stage. So designing that set, we needed to be creative. So we'll talk a little bit about that with our visitors today. But those are some of the things that we have to consider when putting on a play. The other thing we haven't talked about is stage managing, my friend.
Right. I'm the stage manager this time, and I'll be honest, it's a lot of work too. These are the two positions that we have assistant stage managers and assistant directors. If you're interested in learning that, stage manager does a lot and is at every rehearsal, every performance, takes down the blocking and keeps track of the blocking gets changed. And then once actors start getting off book, which means they're supposed to have their lines memorized, and there's a cartoon that says off book is a lie, but then you have to you and feed them the lines if they need it, kind of like being a line reader, and also make notes of what lines they've missed so that they don't keep missing them. You also organize the crew, and if it's a complicated show, then you make a lot of charts and you assign duties for scene changes, and you also call the light cues and the sound cues. So basically, from the weekend before the show on, it's your responsibility to run the show so that Michelle's happy. That's really all it comes down to, is keeping Michelle happy with the vision. She's not hard to please, granted, but we're all just trying to make the show happen the way she saw it in her head. So one of the things that's really important about this, though, is we were talking about the set. And this set takes place in a Five and Dime. I'm sorry, I leaned the wrong way. Takes place in a Five and Dime, both in the 50s and the 70s. And it's only part of the store, but we had a really great creative set designer who's going to come on, and that's where we have a number of designers usually in a show. Somebody will be designing the lights, and that's Rick Neidig, and somebody's going to be designing the sound effects, and that's Adrian Hartwig. But we have with us Brian Touchette, who's our set designer, who not only comes up with the plan for the set, but frankly, in community theater, is usually in charge of making sure it gets built properly too. So that's some good hours too, but it's also a lot of fun. So, Peter, if Brian's around, can we bring him in so he can talk to us? Hello.
Hello, Brian.
Hi there. Great to see you.
Hey, thanks for coming.
Of course.
So, talk to us about what it takes to be a set designer. What sort of skills do you need?
Yeah. So a lot of it really has to do around, and what you were talking about around the being able to implement the vision of a director. Being able to basically, I start with reading a script. I get the general idea of the script, time period, and then you are just, it's a lot of creative energy at that point, because you're trying to figure out how to get whatever that play needs. So with this one, for instance, as you said, we're inside a 5 and dime. So how do I fit a 5 and dime on a 30-foot wide stage, basically? And how much of it? And then one of the things often, it depends if you're doing a play or a musical. Usually musicals tend to have a little bit flatter stages because they need a lot of dancing space. But for plays, often we're trying to look for levels, because directors like to have actors at different levels. It helps so people aren't some people aren't hiding behind each other. And so it's trying to figure out sometimes how those can fit into your set design. And then one of the early questions I ask a director is, are you going realistic with this, or are you going more representational? Representational means that it might not even have all the walls of a room. There might be whole walls missing, or there might not be any walls at all, or it might not even look like a room. Or the same space has to be 8 different scenes, like in completely different places, different apartments. Mm-hmm. So it's really trying to figure out what the script calls for. And that's usually my first read through, is just, there's this many scenes. Where is each scene? Is each scene in the same place? That's a single unit set. Those are the easy ones, relatively easy. Or is it in multiple places?
Excellent. Thank you.
Do you think that someone would need to have building skills in order to be a set designer?
It's an interest. So in theaters that aren't volunteer theaters, the more paid theaters, a set designer is doing more of the conceptual work of what it looks like, but not necessarily have to figure out the engineering of how it's going to be built. Those can be handed off more to the drafts people, although in some cases they are doing that too. It really depends on, it's something to be clear about, I think, up front when you're designing a set is, am I just drawing you the picture and sort of what we call the ground plan? The ground plan is, it's like you're looking straight down on the stage, and I'm basically saying this wall is 4 feet, this door is 30 inches, this window is 2.5 feet, and how high it is. And this platform is 18 inches off the floor with 3 steps to get up to it. And so in some cases, for that, you don't necessarily need to know building, but at Chapel Street, you sort of end up folding both into the same thing. And I think that's true of most nonprofit theaters or smaller theaters, that you're not paying people for the work, is that you sort of have to do both. But I will say there's points that I reach even where I'm not sure, and that we're fortunate to have a few volunteers at Chapel Street that are carpenters. And so I'll often bring them in to sort of advise us. When I did Cuckoo's Nest, we had to have a platform that was about 3 feet off the stage. And I needed it incredibly stable because there'd be numerous people up there. So I brought in a carpenter to give some advisement in terms of how we should build it. So there's always resources you can go to if you're not certain. I design it without necessarily thinking about how I'm going to build it, but you do have to think a little bit about that, because especially for us, the stage is so small. You want to make sure that whatever supports we need, that there's enough room for the supports. Also, there's enough room for the actors to get around. We're a unique space, I think, for other theaters. We don't have a backstage space. We don't have a curtain.
Wings.
We don't have wings. And so basically, as a designer, I'm also basically building in the wings. Anything that's behind the set is basically the wing. And so part of what I'm often thinking about is, all right, how much stuff do they have to store backstage? And is there anything big that has to go back there?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And one of the things we do at Chapel Street that makes it possible for us to do our shows in a row is what we call strike build. And that's where we strike the old set, which means take it down, and then build the next set. And we try to do as much of that as we can in a single afternoon with as many people from the shows coming in and coming out. And part of that is also so that you can get to know people from the other shows besides just watching them.
Yep.
But part of it has the very practical part of somebody's got to haul all this stuff back to the shop and haul this out and put it together. So when you're the set designer, Brian, you typically also run the build part of Strike Build. There's a lot of putting costumes and props away, but you typically run the Strike Build part. So what's that like for you?
So a lot of that's where you have to be really organized, because when you're coming in and we're taking down the set, and we'll be able to start a video of this in a moment, but when we're taking down the set, I have to figure out of the walls. So our walls are built in what are called flats, which are anywhere between 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and 4 foot sections of walls. So they exist. And when we take them down, you basically can put them back up. They're built to be used again and again and again. And so part of what I do ahead of time is I figure out with my set design how many of those walls I'm going to keep. And then I mark them. So as we're taking the walls down, we can set them off to the side, and anything I'm not keeping can go back out to the shop. They do that also with furniture and props and things like that too. They're deciding what they're going to keep and then what's going back. And then the beginning, and Peter, if you want to go ahead and start that video, what we are then basically doing is the first thing we're doing is we're removing all the stuff from the stage. So here you can see we're removing everything from the walls, and we're also removing all the furniture and all of this. This is the casts from both shows doing this right now. And so they take all the walls down, and then once all of that's down, we put chalk lines down for the new walls, and then we just start putting them in. And then in this set, you can also see we have platforms in the back. Earlier I was talking about levels, and there's platforms in the back of this, again, to give some height. And then that's what we were able to do in one afternoon. That was about 4 hours of work was there, what you were seeing. And then we spend the weeks after that, then coming back in, because clearly the set's not done. It needs to be completed. And then that way, and I know you're talking to Scott later about the set decorator, I have to get my work done, because the stuff that makes it look pretty, I'm basically doing the shell, the bones of the set, the walls, and all of that. Scott makes it look like a real place. And so we actually have an example of a video. When I did a funny thing happened way to the forum, we actually did a time lapse. This is about a 2-month time period to build that set. That shows you from the beginning to the end of the work that goes into putting that show together. So Booth, you can go ahead and play that.
Wow.
I know.
I remember being part of that. And when you see it all in that succession, it's like, wow, we did. That's a lot.
I know. And in the end, because, you see that set's very different than your set. And in the end, what I'm doing as a set designer is trying to match the vision of the director. In the end, the director has final say of the set and what it's going to look like. And I'm just trying to make sure that, one, my set doesn't get in the way of what the director is trying to accomplish, and that it only helps and reinforces the director's story. And at times, and we had this last weekend, where there's points that you might have to do minor adjustments to things along the way, because something that you were talking about blocking earlier, something isn't working quite right with the blocking because the platforms are coming out too far or some other thing, or I need more wall space over here. And so it's a lot of problem solving along the way and just trying to figure out how to adjust so that we can still keep the sense of the story of the set, but also that the director actually can also accomplish what they're trying to accomplish.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Brian. We love talking to you. Brian Touchette, everybody give him a round of applause, even if he can't hear you, okay? Because he does great work. Thank you.
Hi, thanks,
It was
Brian.
great seeing you.
It was good seeing you.
So
go ahead.
when you're thinking about volunteering, right? So another reason for us doing this is so that people can see what goes into putting on a play, but also so that you can see all the different opportunities to volunteer in a theater. And because you may see some of the options like ushering and box office, which we'll talk about later, but a lot of these things are things that you may not even know exist. So here's a great opportunity. If you're artistic and you like to design, maybe set design is something for you, or maybe you're just, I want to build, I like hammers and I have a drill and I want to do that. We have many opportunities for you to come and help. So, and as we talk today, you'll find other opportunities.
Right. And then later you can talk to Bill King or listen to Bill King talk about how to actually turn that into actual volunteering.
Right.
One of the other things, Nicole is saying lots of time and love going to making a show. And it is all volunteer. The only people who get paid are the cleaning company. And even then we only have them come in once a month. We have to keep it tidy ourselves. So thank you. So there's also another set of roles, sort of design. I keep leaning the wrong way, sort of design, sort of not. But it's a group that they don't necessarily come to rehearsals and they don't necessarily have to be there at the play. So it's, and there are also roles that sometimes we fill and sometimes we don't, depending on what the show needs. And also, frankly, if we have anyone available to do it. So that's things like the person who takes care of costumes, can be a costume designer, but might just be someone who's pulling stuff from Goodwill. We have properties. They used to say master and mistress, but I guess we should say manager now. I'm making it that change now officially. Okay. I'm like Scott, I'm making a unilateral decision. We have properties managers. And we also have, as Brian alluded to, someone who's in charge of decorating the set so it looks right,
Absolutely. So if you wanted to actually look like a house or an office building or a five and dime, you need someone that has that detail vision, creativity, as well as detail to turn it into that. And we have a friend who also happens to be the president of Chapel Street, who's going to be decorating the set for Five and Dime, but he has done that for many other sets. So we would like to invite Scott Mason to talk to us today. Welcome,
hey, Scott.
Hello, ladies. As Judy was saying that she's made an executive decision, which I support, about the property manager. I want to put my president hat on and tell you, ladies, while you have been doing such a great job during the show, you must be inspirational because we've gotten more donations in this last 20 minutes or so, and we have now surpassed our 12,500 goal.
That is fantastic. So well, thank you, everyone, for donating. Really.
So thank you, everyone. And I'll make the executive decision. If you want to, Michelle and Judy, if you can say the number, I'll visually do.
So what? 1,400?
15,000?
15,000? You want $15,000?
Yeah,
we're seriously generous volunteers, donors.
Very generous.
And I say that because
he's the president, because he's more, we're a little bit more reserved. So
right,
excellent.
Yes. I know.
So
there's so many friends of Chapel Street players that have had heard about our seat program, and so we know that some more are coming. So we feel that I feel confident. Let's be confident. And already, you two in less than half your show have already inspired so many people. So I know you will continue to inspire for the rest of the lunch hour. Yeah. But yes, that's decoration.
We hope that people will be also inspired to volunteer.
Yes.
I'm sure that many of you realize that over the past, let's say 10 years or so, volunteerism is kind of sliding back. And we cannot put on the amazing shows that we do without a lot of people, which is why we're here talking today, of all of the different people. So we absolutely need volunteers as well as your donations. So thank you so much.
Yes,
indeed. And so set decorating.
Yes.
Buying, these massive sets. And of course, the first thing you need to do is talk to the director about their concept. You may have, as a designer, a concept after reading a script or seeing a film version of it, but it's really about what the director wants. So as Brian alluded to, sometimes you have a realistic set, sometimes you have a more minimalistic set, and so the set decoration has to fit into that vision. Once talking to the director, you've got to find out a couple of key points. Biggest one is, what is the time period? What a house, the interior of a house in the 70s or the 60s is a lot different than the interior house of here in the millennium, in terms of color and color choices, and wallpaper, no wallpaper, kinds of curtains. It's all about details, I think, is the main thing. And I'm a stickler for detail, because these curtains didn't exist in these kind of curtains like that. I'll just do a very easy example. Right now, you go to buy curtains, everybody has now the curtains with the big rings at the top, and they slide on a pole. Well, we didn't have those in the 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s. Things, fabrics, patterns, they all change over time. So again, really important, what is the time detail? What is the time setting? And then another important detail is the overall palette. I mentioned, having colors that are appropriate to a time period, but in it sometimes, again, it might not be specific. We might be in just a non-descriptive space. Judy, you directed a show once where we had curtains and blocks and squares of things became furniture, and it was not like real furniture, but you wanted a certain color to create a certain feeling. So even when the set is sort of feng shui and surreal, the color choices are so important, and you want to have a color that is going to complement the whole show and also be nice to look at. You can go, let's have this color choice, but then it's up there and you're looking at the stage and it's a hideous color. and the color just turns you off. And then the other fun thing too with set decoration is if you get into exteriors and working with material, it's hard to have live grass at the theater. Judy, you once directed a show though, was on a beach, and you brought in tons of sand, and real sand was on the stage, and making faux things. So we don't, if people want, say, a floor, let's go back to the interior, and people want a hardwood floor, we're not buying even Pergo and then throwing it away. It's a paint effect. And Ray Bardo, who's on our board, he does amazing. He's so much better than me. Does amazing paint effects. So, and it's too much to cover in today, but you can paint something to look like marble. You can paint something to look like hardwood floor, and that is just, or tile, whatever it might be. And so it's a lot of fun. You get to be creative. I don't want to take up too much time, but the main thing is working with the director, understanding what the show is about, and making creative choices. Let's just take a look, if we can, at some of the set decorations that have been on Chapel. So this is obviously the 70s, and the house was not supposed to be been taken care of for quite some time. So I made faux dirt on the wall and made it look sort of dingy. Had wallpaper that was missing by the window, maybe it got wet. This was a show that Shannon April set on a balcony, and there needed to be lots of purple flowers all around, and that was a really fun thing to do, and do like the stucco effect on the wall. Here's an interior. I always like to have a baseboard and an upper board if it's going to be a house, because it makes it not look like a flat. This was for a Christmas Carol sort of play, and was again doing exteriors, faux brick, faux stones. It's all painted stones on the stage, but hopefully it looks like real stones. And from the audience, fake snow, obviously. This was another show where the color is really important. It's called Memory of Water, and so I tried to make the house, the scene, look like water, but the color tones, the color choices, aquas, blues. And this finally was One Flew the Cuckoo's Nest, which you might It was a joke, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't know. People can watch the recording and see the little fun guy sitting in it. That wasn't meant to be there.
Right. But then actually that's the show that what gave us the whole concept for this thing was the show that Steve Ashby was in. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Which was
Yeah.
One
And
Flew
then
Over.
Stephen Ashby was in it too. So that was great fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that's interesting to notice, Scott's not just doing set decoration, he's also taken on props. Sometimes because they're kind of interconnected, it's easier to do both, but also just frankly, sometimes we need people and we have to take on double duty. So if you're interested in doing something like this and you like doing things that are decorating, if you like going shopping and buying things, that's also a great place to like use those skills. And one of the things that is really great now, because I'm old, and the internet was young when I was young, is you used to have like books that had references to different costumes and stuff. And now you just go online and be like, do you have a picture of what kind of cleaning products did they use in the 50s? You know, and it's a lot faster and easier to do that research so that you can spend more time actually making it happen instead of having to really get down into the details and do research in an archive somewhere.
Oh, absolutely, Judy. It's a good last point. I was talking about the 60s and 70s and the 80s. I mean, obviously, I can remember, growing up and knowing what things look like. But certainly, if we were doing a play set in the 1800s or, earlier 1920, I know, there's Art Deco, but was it in the 1920s or sort of shifted into the 30s? So, yes, the internet is our designing friend for sure. But
Absolutely.
Well, ladies, it was great chatting with you. I'm going to go up our goal to 15,000. Keep doing what you do magically. And, we already got there. It is.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
And thank you all. Thank you all, supporters of Chapel Street Players. And we'll see you later at the cocktail hour.
Absolutely.
Yes, you will. All right.
Thank you, Scott.
All right.
So, Judy, what are some of the other things? So when we're actually ready to put the show up and it's like opening night, what are some of the people that make the show happen, like say, backstage?
Right. We have basically people that we call them the crew as opposed to the cast. The cast is the actors. The crew is the people who are working behind the scenes in the show. And that primarily comes down to the booth folk or the backstage people. So in the booth, we typically have people running sound and lights, or sometimes one person does both if it's a very simple show. Let me tell you, Jimmy Dean, we're going to need both. I've occasionally been in shows where we've had to have a third person up there just because there's only so many hands. And they come in usually the week before, and we spend a day going over what all the different cues are they have to do and make sure they're right and make sure they understand them and practice running them. Then we bring in like the actors the next day and run what we call a cue to cue, and have the actors just go and give the motion so that the booth people know what they're looking at. Because you may say, all right, well, Cindy crosses to the bar, but you don't know who Cindy is, and somebody else crosses to the bar, you might go. Now, on top of that, the stage manager still calls the cues, but it's helpful to have them know what they're actually looking at. We have things called visual cues too, where if the stage manager's backstage, you can't really see. So the people in the booth have to see it. If you've ever been to Chapel Street, you've seen them. They're up in that big thing up in the air with the opening in the middle so they can see out. We also have backstage folks, and that's where sometimes the person who acquires the props also runs the props. We have people who you could be the assistant stage manager. The stage manager stays backstage. The crew can do things like costume changes with folks and that's called being a dresser, or they can just do scene changes. So if you're good at working around in the dark, we could use you because you're doing it in a very dim light. You go in and you just and change the set to a whole nother day or a whole nother place. And that's actually a lot of fun.
One of my first jobs in a theater back in school was to be on the running crew. We call it the running crew. So in scene changes, so in between scenes when the lights go down and you have to maybe switch chairs around or bring out a pitcher of water or that sort of thing. So those are the backstage crew. And that was my very first thing. And I just loved it. I thought, wow, this is just, I felt like I was in, I was in the in crowd.
Yeah.
And so that's a great way to get in theater. If you think, oh, I don't know how to build, or I don't know, I don't know these other things. well, you don't need any special skills for a lot of this,
Right.
but that specifically, it's a great way to be a part of a show.
Right.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No,
but I want
no,
to make
it's
sure.
true.
Yeah,
No.
we talked about that. But
Yeah.
the booth as well,
Yeah.
we were talking about cues, right? So cues being like, when exactly the light comes up or when exactly the sound gets played. We have computerized systems
Mhm.
that so when it's time to turn the light on or to whatever, you just kind of push a button.
Right.
And the sound system is a little bit tiny more complicated, but really not
much.
really
Right.
not much. If you can click a mouse.
When I first started doing theater, you had to like pull these big levers and you had to unpatch and plug other things in, and it was like a physical job.
And then when you had multiple cues and you had to hit all the sliders at the same time, that was a lot more complicated.
Yeah, and what's nice is you don't have, because each cue has like the designer sets a certain level, either for sound or for the lights, and you have to replicate those. And in the past, you had to do it by hand. And that's not something I would hand off to say, oh, anyone can do this. But this is really, if you want to see the show and press the button and come to the parties, that's a job for you. It's a really fun job.
That's true.
Yeah.
We didn't really mention the whole social aspect yet. And I don't think we put that on our schedule to talk about the social aspect. But a lot of us do theater, for the social aspect, because we like theater people.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a great way to meet people because you're together for lots of periods of time. And we have a lot of fun. So, if that's what you're looking to do, where there's a lot of opportunities, which of course we're talking about. We want to talk about Tech Week, right?
Right. Yes. Right. Because we have Tech Week, and that's where if you're going to be crew, but you're not like the director, assistant director, stage manager, assistant stage manager, that's usually when you come in. Now, for this particular show, our Tech weekend is usually the weekend before the show is Easter. So we're going to Tech a week early. But generally you come in on Saturday around noon and you stay until it's done. And I've had techs that have run 2-3 hours and ones that you've been there all night and come in early the next day. It just depends. And then the next day you do the Q to Q, and then you do runs. And then the rest of that week you run the show with all the technical elements in it so that we get used to it. And I'll be honest, the cast, somehow when you start putting lights on them, they tend to just forget everything they've spent months learning about. I know Mama O's that's a secret. We're talking about that in a minute. Mama O's talking about people meeting their spouses. It has happened.
It happens a lot.
Yes. So
true. So we often say for folks who have been only act, and I'm not saying only actors, but if you haven't done tech work but you've acted, and if you haven't acted but you've done tech work and you haven't crossed over, we often say during Tech Week that the actors have had a couple of months to get their stuff together, learn their lines or blocking and all of that. But the tech crew really only has 1 week.
Yeah.
So we always say to the actors, try and be patient because they only have a week to figure out what's going on, when they need to do certain things. And that's it. You have a week to get that right. And it always comes together. It always comes together.
And there's always that minute where you're like, oh my Lord, this show is turning into a pile of dung and we can't open and I need to move to Alaska. And then it comes together and it's fabulous and fun.
Right.
Yes.
So you may often see people like on Facebook specifically, actors might say, oh, it's Facebook's. I mean, I'm sorry, it's Tech Week. So I can't do anything. Don't invite me to anything. And so if you've wondered like, what do they mean by it's Tech Week?
Yeah.
Well, every single night we're at the theater working on the technical aspects. So we're there for a good week. Nonstop.
Right. And we've also, you should have already heard from Cindy and Michelle O, who are our VPs in charge of house management and box office, about ushering and about doing the box office, which is really important, that you're the face of the theater. Right. And yes, you get to see the show for free. It's fun. But I don't know why we're so proud of seeing the show for free, but it's good. It's good to just be able to come and be part of the crowd.
It's up to $20 now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so if you could get a $20 gift card for something, you'd be excited about that. Yeah. So that's essentially what it is, but you're getting to see a show for free.
And then we also have, Cindy is as house management. She also has to take care of the program. I think Gary's been working on getting ads for the program. Like the program doesn't just happen. That's a lot of work. The pictures, we're very lucky to have Peter Coe do pictures for us because he's really talented.
The headshots.
And Nicole, sets it up. Nicole.
We Chapel Street, I don't know if other theaters do this, but we also try to support other local artisans. And so Chapel Street displays artwork in our basement. So Nicole is our chairperson, Nicole Pierce, who gets our artists. So if you come to Chapel Street and see a show and need to go downstairs to get a drink of water and use the bathroom, you'll see that we have artists every show. We try to display something different. Right.
And pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic, that's also where we have our intermission. So it's not like we're just shoving art in the basement, but it's like it's a lobby area with a bar and we sell refreshments and stuff. Right now, we're just giving away water.
Right.
All right. How are we on time? We're at 12:40. So,
well, we talked a little bit about the front of house, right? So when we say front of house, we say these are the folks that need to that are there to make things happen that night.
Yeah.
Right. So we talked about box office and ushering, and and we mentioned all of these other things that, you don't need skills for. But some people may not want to commit during a whole show. They may think, I can't really do that. I have a tight schedule. So those box office and ushering are great opportunities for people who do have a tight schedule, and you can only really commit to, say, maybe doing one night, one thing. So those are awesome opportunities to be involved in theater, get to know theater, and to see a show for free. And you don't really need special skills. And I will say again that these are also hard roles to fill. So you may not be thinking that, hey, maybe I should usher, or do you think they might need box office help? Well, the answer to that is yes, and yes, and yes. Especially as a box office, because people might feel intimidated that it's really complicated.
Especially this show, because our VP of box office is a major role in the show.
Exactly.
So she's going to need some help, because I can't have her thinking about the box office.
Right.
She's supposed to be getting ready for the show.
We are both box office volunteers as well, and we're involved in the show, so we can't do it. So it's definitely, again, a great opportunity. And you meet people. You get to meet our patrons and all of the actors.
And you get to use the square, and that's fun.
That's true. Taking credit cards. I mean, isn't it fun to take other people's money? I mean, that's fun.
I know. And then the thing is, there's also always what we call the BMOD, the board member on duty. So always in the show, somebody who's on the board is there in case there's an issue. So you don't have to worry about,
that's true,
as I've done in the past, what to do when a drunk shows up and wants to watch the show.
Not that
loudly.
Happens often.
Not often, no. Or just, if somebody thought they made a reservation but didn't, all of those things, there's always a board member there to help if there's anything you need help with. So it's not like you're solely on your own, with this sort of thing. We have support for you. But yeah, please.
So all of the things we've talked about today are volunteering, all of the different opportunities to volunteer. So if it never occurred to you, please consider volunteering your time. Again, it doesn't have to be a lot of time, and you don't have to have any special skills whatsoever. And if you're sitting there thinking like, I don't know any of this stuff, trust me, we all started somewhere. We all started not knowing anything. And I think we're pretty good teachers and we're pretty good people. So we would definitely teach you. And if Chapel Street isn't close to you, consider volunteering at a local theater that is close to you, because trust me, every single community theater need your support, not just financial support, because the arts are, especially took a big hit during COVID, but also your time is also really important. So consider that. Today at 4, our volunteer vice president of volunteerism, Bill King, will be doing a little talk about how to sign up to be a volunteer. So that will be at 4:00 today. So tune in. So if hopefully we've piqued your interest and you're like, I think I might want to look into that.
It's a lot of fun.
It is. And Bill will tell you at 4:00 how to volunteer. But of course, you can always go to our website. So we have a little video before we talk about Jimmy Dean, which is the show that's coming up and we're both involved in. And the assistant director, Gary, is going to be joining us soon as well. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that play. But before we do, why don't we finish the volunteer talk with a video that we took happened to be of some of the cast and Gary as well, talking about why they chose Chapel Street or why they chose this show.
Yeah, and why they love it, because we love it.
So I'm Cindy Starcher, and I've been here forever. It's like my second home. And I auditioned for this show because, oh my God, how could you not audition for a show with so many women? I just knew I would, I would love being in it if I had been cast, which thank God I was, because it's just a wonderful group of people. And I love Michelle, and I love Judy, and I love everybody. And it's just, I don't know what else I can say, but.
So I chose to audition for the show just because it's got a very strong female cast in it and being run by a female director and a female stage manager who I've worked with before and had, such a pleasant time. If you're gonna go out and do some volunteer work in the community, this is where you want to be.
Hi, I'm Michelle Opoleski. The reason I auditioned for this play is, first of all, the characters are awesome. Like, I would have played any character in this play. Any role would have been wonderful, and I'm so psyched that I get to play Sissy. However, also, I wanted to work with Michelle Cullen. I've been with Chapel Street for a while, and I've never had her as a director, and it's somebody I've always wanted to work with. Judy David is the same, and Gary's new to the scene, and I'm anxious to work with him too. And then all of the actors in the play are phenomenal, and I've not worked with a lot of them, so I've enjoyed them and gone to see them, and now I get to work with them, which really geeks me out. So yeah, that's why I auditioned. So Chapel Street's a great place. Chapel Street is fun. We are very much like a family, somewhat dysfunctional, but not terribly. And we really do appreciate everybody that comes out and volunteers. So if you want to volunteer, especially in the box office, please don't hesitate. Thanks for your donations.
Go.
Hi, my name is Gary Kirchhoff, and I love working with everyone at Chapel Street Players because it's a small, intimate crowd and a group of people who are immensely talented and enormously talented, and we have fun and express ourselves and be silly, but also be dramatic and put on shows that are some that you've seen, but always with a different twist. And we have a great group of people to work with.
Hi, I'm Danielle Cathcart. I am playing Mona Then in the upcoming Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean. Why I love Chapel Street is it really gave me a sense of community. I moved to Delaware from Pennsylvania knowing no one and nothing, and I've met so many amazing people and made great friends and also met the love of my life, so can't complain about that. It's just a great place with great people.
Yep. That was 1984.
Mm-hmm.
They Danielle and Patrick were playing the male and female romantic leads, and I remember when they first started kissing, I was like, this does not look believable at all. Can you all go out and get to know each other a little better so that you're more comfortable on stage? And then I had to take a week off to go to a conference, and I came back and they were like, I was like, that's enough. That's enough. So
you were effective.
Yes, they did their work. And it actually was really lovely.
It is. And it does happen often.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that story a lot.
Right.
So those were just a few of our cast members talking about, why they came out to talk or to audition for Chapel Street or why they volunteer for Chapel Street.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we talk a little bit about the play that we're doing right now and invite in the assistant director, Gary Kirchhoff. And we'll talk a little bit about the show.
Hey Gary. Oh, story in the script.
Oh, hello. Yes, I was just reading a play you may be familiar with.
Yeah, yes. Which one would that be?
Oh, it would be Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean.
Oh, yes. I've only read it maybe 20 times so far.
So you are
unlike Michelle, who's read it at least 100. Yes.
So yes, you're familiar. That's right. You guys look awesome. I apologize for not dressing up for you. You look amazing.
But my bra strap keeps showing, so
it's all good.
Yeah.
Welcome, Gary. So it's good to have since as people alluded in the video, there are a lot of female characters in this role, in this play, with one male character. So it's good to have an additional male person on our crew, so that you can round it out a little bit. We need some testosterone in the group and to remind us, give us another perspective. So we're glad to have you, Gary, for many other reasons besides that, of course.
Right.
I'm glad and honored to be part of it. It's amazing. An amazing show, amazing cast, amazing play. I think, not to slam anything, let's be positive, but it's so much better than the movie, right?
Yeah,
it's so much better to see it this and with the people that we have and the talent and with you guys behind it. I can't wait.
there's some really visceral moments, but there's also some really funny moments, you know.
Yes.
And there's a number of different twists, so it's hard to talk about the plot without giving things away. But it is ultimately, what would you say would be one of the main themes for you, Michelle? What do you think?
Well, so it's a lot about relationships and how, as we age, since a lot of us are of a certain age, as we age and look back to our younger days, we may have a different, we remember things a little bit differently. And so if you could hold up a mirror to what it was really like, you might not, it might not be exactly as you remembered it. And I think this play highlights that a little bit, and how we look at things differently as we age, and how things, also how we hide some things that we might not want others to see. And if we are willing to be brave and show our true selves, I think we'd be happier. And that, I think the play also talks a lot about that, or helps you see that. Like if we can show ourselves, but also be accepting of each other, we would be a lot happier people than instead of having to hide.
I think that's a really, really good way of describing it. You're a genius. That's why we're working with you.
It's true.
Know? So
it's true.
I know. And for me, I think there's a lot about just love in there, which most good plays are about love in some way or another. But this one is really strong about the love between friends, you know?
Good. Yeah. Absolutely. What do you think, Gary?
I think you're both right. I think for me, there's I don't know if we all go through it, but I certainly did. There's a yearning sort of for the glory days, right? But and you come, hopefully we arrive at a point where you're like, you know what, things are good. It will be okay. Things are good for me now. And maybe it didn't turn out like I thought it would, but things are good now, and we have things to look forward to. So you don't have to live sort of in the past and regret, right? Because we know and strong. And then the idea of love, it's for each other and for friends, but also for yourself. I mean, we see characters who, go from a very sort of sad place, looking from the outside, to really growing into themselves and, filling holes and filling, giving themselves the love that they needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent point.
Yeah. I'm gonna put you both on the spot, because I'm gonna start with Gary. If you could go back and tell your 18-year-old self one thing, what would that be?
Oh, there are so many.
Pick one or two. You can have two if you want.
Not to be so hard on myself, probably, and that it is going to be okay. And it might be better than okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a possibility that it could be better than okay. So embrace the possibilities.
Yeah. Michelle?
I would say that people are not paying as much attention to you as you think you are. So as they do. So if you're very self-conscious and thinking that the whole world is staring at you, the reality is they're probably worried more about what people are thinking of them than they are of their opinion of you. And I wish I would have known that or realized that.
That's awesome. Very good. And I think that's something we all need to know.
Yeah, you get to answer.
Oh, no, I asked the question. How can I have...
Oh, wait. We're not allowed to turn it back on you? That doesn't seem fair.
I see. No, I think for me, I would say that, the journey you may see for yourself may not be the journey you end up on. And enjoy that journey, because it's going to take you where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
That's right. And there's value.
That's a lot of that angst that kids have, because everything is so important to them.
That's true.
Right.
It's such a great question, because this play is a lot about that. And if you kind of grasp what we were talking about earlier about how it takes place in two different time frames, 1955 and 1975, it's because there are some flashback scenes. So there are people that are playing or playing 18-year-old versions of 30-year-old versions of the same characters. So they on stage, they get to show these things, right? They get to show these. If only we had that ability to bring in our 18-year-old selves and watch ourselves do things. I don't know. Maybe that would be kind of cringeworthy if you could see yourself at 18 doing stupid stuff. I don't
even like watching rehearsals, even though we're still just in the blocking phase. There are sometimes they say stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember when I thought that this was the most unique, deep thought I've ever had. anyone ever had. And it's like, what happens when you die? I'm like, really, that's not that deep a thought. But when you're 18, it is, and so you have to remember with kindness how new you are to the world at that age. And so you also have to be able to forgive yourself for mistakes you made at that age.
That's a really good point. And I think you said something earlier I wanted to highlight in that, as we're talking and you might be getting an opinion of the show, that it's very deep. And it is. It has some deep moments, and it does have some very dramatic moments, but it also has fun. It's also comedic, and it has
it's
some
a bunch of South Texas girls getting drunk.
Yes.
How can that not be fun?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So we don't want you to think that it's an overly dramatic play, but this definitely has some really great themes. And this is a character play, meaning that every single character just is so multidimensional. And I love those kind of plays because, and as an actress, of course, we love to play those kind of roles. But I also love to see that because if you get to see the play multiple times, you can see different things that maybe you didn't see before.
Yeah. Which is also why I love live theater, because it's never exactly the same. It's ephemeral, and yet it's gorgeous. And I love theaters for that reason, and I think one of the things too, that's great about this show is so many people are playing different roles. Like we have in the booths, people who have been backstage or have been on stage. We have, people on stage who have been backstage. I think Michelle and I have done practically every job there is at the theater. And I'm going to give a little pitch because Gary's assistant directed for me. And he's assistant directing for Michelle, but he's going to be taking on the reins of his own show. Yes. You want to talk about that for just a half a second?
I would love to. I don't want to take away from what we're doing now, but yes, I'm thrilled and honored and humbled to be directing the season opener for our 22-23 season. We'll be doing Death Trap.
So Gary's going to need volunteers too.
Absolutely.
So if you're interested in working on that show, then that's something you want to sign up for. Now that's a big name show that a lot of people know, but even just listening to Gary talk about what he wants to do, I think he's got a really deep understanding of the play, and he'll have something fresh for you to see. So that's one of the beautiful things about Chapel Street is sometimes you're the person who's just sweeping the stage, and sometimes you're the one who's in charge of everything, and then the nice thing is you go back and forth. So you can't be an autocrat, because next show you could be the one sweeping the stage. So don't be mean to the person sweeping the stage, because it's going to be you next time. It's like you clean the toilets and you design the lights, you vacuum out the theater and you empty out the trash, and you're also the director in charge of the whole show. It's just a lot of fun because you're not stuck in a particular role, which I have to say, when you're doing professional theater with the union and everything, sometimes you do tend to be in just one role, and it's hard to cross and grow. I ran booth for a long time until I started saying, well, maybe I can design some lights a little bit, and I did for a little while, and then I haven't lately because we've been virtual. But yeah, it's a good thing to see. Gary's worked on different shows. So he's going to take the reins next time. Time after that, well, in between 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, where Zach is going to be directing, and then Gary. Yes. And so that's what it's kind of it's egalitarian, even while it's hierarchical. Now I'm just using all my big words. Stop.
Yeah. So good point. Our next show is Putnam County Spelling Bee, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. And that is being directed by Zach Jackson. Auditions are coming up very soon. You can go to our website and get the dates, because I don't know them offhand, but they are in a couple of weeks. No, the auditions are in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, they're March 24th-ish, but double check.
And so the show goes up in June. That's our fundraiser. It's a great musical. And then, as we already said, Gary's the season opener for the next season.
Yeah.
So we have, as we talked today, we have lots of opportunities for you to volunteer. And we are just humbled by your generosity and all of your donations to Chapel Street. I mean, we just can't even believe it. So we're so glad you joined us for this hour. We hope that you can join us later. We are closing out the 24-hour period with a cocktail hour at 5 p.m. led by Brian Touchette. And if you spent the whole hour with us, you met him early on in our hour. He will be leading us in that cocktail party. So, hey, get a drink and join us for 5 at 5 o'clock, which will close out this whole 24-hour period.
And if you're still not sure about how to volunteer, listen to our lovely Bill King. He's the nicest man on the planet.
He really is.
He really is. At 4 o'clock. So I think the last thing to do is say goodbye and let you listen to the thing about the chairs again. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Very nice.
Our part of our capital campaign may inspire you to donate just a little bit more.
Yeah.
As part of the Do More 24 campaign, we are offering a special incentive for our Chapel Street patrons, volunteers, and friends. As many of you have heard, CSP is working with Lang Development to build a brand new theater, and even better news, it has plenty of parking. We have started a soft launch of our capital campaign to assist with the move and new facility. The capital campaign kicks off with Take a Seat. We'll be investing in new auditorium seating, and you have the opportunity to buy a chair and become a permanent fixture without even being there. And if for some reason we remain in our current space, your donations will help us to replace our current seats. During the capital campaign, you will be able to purchase a seat for $1,000. Your donation allows you to select any section of the theater in which to place your seat. But as part of the Do More 24 campaign, we are cutting the Take a Seat price in half, and you can grab your seat for only $500. This offer is only available during the Do More 24 campaign. Also, your $500 donation does not have to be a single donation. It can be cumulative across the 24-hour period. A plaque on your seat can include your name, your family's name, a name of a loved one, or even your company. Your plaque will remind future generations that your personal commitment makes their theater experience possible. We thank you in advance for your generosity, and we would also like to thank Do More 24 Delaware and the many sponsors who are giving additional incentives and bonuses during this event. We would also like to thank the Delaware Division of the Arts for their continued support of artists across the state of Delaware and to Chapel Street Theater.